Hey, welcome back, everyone, to Pave the Way podcast. I'm here with very successful rental property investor, Mark Owens out of the Baltimore area. And you guys are going to learn a lot today on the show about building a scalable rental portfolio. So, Mark, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
Hey, you're welcome, Greg. I appreciate you having me, man. I'm always happy to be able to share my information with other people and hopefully be able to give them some information that'll help them get to wherever they want to be. That's
Awesome,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. It's funny. Quick story how I actually found Mark. I was, I've been flipping a lot of properties over the last couple years, and I'm like, I really got to build up a rental portfolio because that's where the wealth is. So I type in BRRRR, like just BRRRR on the iTunes search, and I find this random podcast with this guy named Mark Owens. I listened to it 4 times in a row, I think in like 2 days. And then I was like, holy shit, I got to reach out to this guy. So reached out to Mark on Facebook, and he agreed to be a guest on my show. So that's how I connected with Mark. So, you never know till you reach out. So Mark, before we get into, today's show about building up a rental portfolio and scaling it out, what was your background before you got into this business?
I was actually in the IT business, and I'm going way back. I bought my first rental in 2002. I think it was February 2002, maybe March. So it's been, I guess, a little over 17 years. Before that, I was an IT guy. I was actually a Microsoft certified trainer, and I was teaching in colleges all over the Maryland, Pennsylvania area. And I was making really good money, but I didn't live up to my income. I stayed at, I lived below my income, saved a lot of money, put a lot of money in the stock market, made a lot of money. The market turned, lost a lot of money, and said, I got to get out of this shit. This is like, excuse me.
No, you can curse.
Got to get out of this stuff, and I need to find an investment vehicle that is a little bit more predictable and that I have a little bit more control over. I don't have to worry about the president saying something stupid or Alan Greenspan saying something stupid and losing 25% of my market value of my stuff like the next day. And real estate just seemed like the way to go for me. Residential real estate seemed like the way to go for me. So that's kind of the real brief history of where I was at before I got started.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny you said that about the stock market. I think I saw the Joe Rogan podcast with Elon Musk, and I think he was smoked a joint on like YouTube Live, and the fucking stock just dropped. So I'm like, that's terrible. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I agree with you, man. You want to be in something you can control more. So had a good job. You weren't, like desperate or anything. You were in a pretty good position, but you realized you had to kind of, switch it up to be more successful. So what does your kind of portfolio look like today? And then we'll kind of get it really into the nuts and bolts on how you did it.
Sure. Most of my stuff, I've got a little over 100 units. I would say that 90%, 85-90% are residential. That includes single family homes as well as, mid-sized apartment buildings like 7 to 18 units. I've got, 7, 13, 14, 15, and 18 unit buildings that comprise a lot of the units. And then a bunch of single families. I got some properties that are like 2, 3, 4 units, but that's mostly it. I've got some small storefront commercial properties where they're rented out to small churches or hair braiding, or one guy actually makes like false teeth. It's a space, I wouldn't want to put anything in my mouth that I saw made in that shop. So just keep that in mind when you need your dentures. But the residential stuff for me is where it's at. I mean, Amazon, first the malls like started to affect like Main Street America. Now Amazon is affecting the malls, and but no matter what, people always need a place to live.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's basically like most of it is like when you say residential, like rental units to tenants, not like businesses or like office space, stuff like that, right?
That's correct. Yep.
And do you think, before we get into the nuts and bolts of really the BRRRR strategy, do you think really once people kind of get some traction, let's say they get 10 or 15 single family homes successfully, acquired and rented out. I mean, it sounds to me like you really started scaling with these mid-size apartment buildings just because you have the efficiencies with having one roof instead of having, 18 roofs. Is that pretty on the mark there?
There's, I would say for most people, I would describe my investing experience as like a book where, you start at chapter 1, I bought a small property and it was turnkey. And then chapter 2 is I bought a property, single family, need a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Chapter, by the time you get to chapter 5, it's a mid-sized building that needs work. And it's kind of like that. A lot of people just want to skip chapters. They just want to go right to chapter 10 and buy a 100-unit complex that's fully rented with on-site property management, and they don't have any experience in anything. And so the first thing that I want to know is, well, why do you want to do that? Because a lot of this is like ego driven for people, where they want to go get a nice car to sit on and have pictures all over Instagram and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you're looking for like wealth and freedom, I would probably do the chapters in order. And when I say this, it's because a lot of people want to fall into this trap of jumping on these large multifamily properties. And what I want to tell you is that single family properties, from my experience, cash flow better. And some of the reasons for that is because the tenants tend to stay in the houses longer than they stay in apartments.
Mm.
So if I get a tenant in a house, they're going to be there 6 or 7 years. If I get a tenant in an apartment, they're going to be there 2 years, maybe 3 at the most. So you get that turnover thing you have to deal with. The other thing that you have to deal with is with an apartment building, you're going to be getting calls from tenants complaining because the guy upstairs is too loud, or the people downstairs are too loud, or somebody left their stinky shoes in front of their apartment and they got to smell them when they go to their apartment. I mean, it's just like all that stuff. And there's also added expenses, like, you're going to have to now pay somebody else to cut the lawn, pay somebody else to shovel the snow. You might have to pay $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 a month for a dumpster service. So there are other things involved in it. The other thing is, and this is more long-term stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually short-term and long-term. If you're going to look for an apartment building and you're saying, okay, I want to get 5 units and up that needs renovation, you're going to find them, but it's going to take a while. If you're looking for a house that's like that, you can probably find one a week. So it's a lot easier to find the deals. And then when you go to sell them, it's a lot easier to sell them. Let's just say you've got 50 houses that you want to sell.
Yeah.
You can list them with, 10 agents or 5 agents or 50 agents, or put them on Craigslist. And you've got a huge market of investors that are looking to buy single family houses. You get a 15-unit apartment building that you want to sell, it's a very small market. And most of those people are a little bit more sophisticated. If you're going to sell a single family house for $75,000, you've got a huge market. You've got newbie investors, you've got old time investors, you've just got people that have been doing it for 20 years, people that are looking for their first one. If you're going to sell a 15-unit building, you don't have all those people.
Yeah, there's a limited market.
Yeah, so it's really, I think that the single family homes are a lot more liquid. The market is a lot more liquid. I think the cash flow is better. I think it's, just in my opinion, it's just easier to scale. Not as fast. You're probably not going to find a 20-unit package. You can find a 20-unit building, but you're not going to find a 20-unit package of houses that quickly. But you can scale your portfolio more predictably.
Mm.
So you can say, okay, I'm kind of busy right now. My crew's too busy. I'm going to hold off. I'm not going to buy anything for 3 months. And then if you see that, okay, I got some jobs winding down, I want to keep my crew busy, I'm going to try to find a couple houses in the next week or two. If that's possible to do.
Yeah, you could do it. Yeah. And like you said earlier, I'm glad we kind of went down this little rabbit hole here, because I think a lot of people, and a lot of stuff that I read, quite frankly, and study and listen to and even look at to make offers, it's like, they're like, oh, well, single family home, you got one person paying rent. So when that person leaves, the house is vacant. But yet I just moved from my apartment in San Diego to my new townhouse, and that apartment building just had a freaking turnover they had to deal with. If I had a house rented, let's say I go rent a house somewhere, I'm going to want to stay there, like you said, for a while. So I think that is kind of BS. If you really think about it, it's funny you said that. I never looked at it.
There's actually, there's a lot more to it, because comparing like a 10-unit building to having one house isn't a fair comparison. Let's compare 10 houses to a 10-unit building. That's a more fair comparison. So I just figured this out recently. I did a class a few weeks ago, and before I did this class, I'd been thinking about it for a few weeks, just about my own career path in this business. And I realized that there are like 3 stages to it. The first stage is you need to buy enough properties where the business can support itself.
Yes.
So what I mean by that is, if you've got one house and it goes vacant, well, you got a mortgage to pay, taxes, insurance, you got to maybe paint the house again, and you're going to lose a couple months rent. Where's that money coming from? It's probably coming from your job, your business account, or something like that. Yeah. So the first goal is if you got 10 houses and one goes vacant, I don't know how to do this, that one goes vacant.
Yeah.
These other 9 can support this one. So that your business has enough income coming in to support itself. Then the next stage is, after you've reached this, then you can start adding more units to replace your income.
Mm.
So if you make $60,000 a year and you're thinking, man, screw this rat race. I read that book that rich dad, poor dad guy wrote 20 years ago, and I really want to get out of the rat race. That's fine, but you can't skip steps. The first step, the business needs to support itself. The second step is you continue to acquire units to replace your income. If,
Mm.
if you quit your job here and then a couple units go vacant, maybe not one, maybe two or three, well, now you're screwed. And I call that celebrating too soon. And I've seen it happen so many times where people get a few units. They think, man, I'm good at this shit. I'm quitting my fucking job. I'm out of here. And then they get a couple of vacants that come up, some unforeseen things, where they come up with all these other expenses that they weren't expecting. And maybe those expenses don't even involve their rentals. Maybe it involves the transmission of their car that they're driving or the roof on the house that they're living in. They get all these big expenses that come in, and those 9 houses aren't going to be able to support all that. Then things start to fall apart. They got to run back out and get a job. They're scrambling to try to catch up. So the second stage is get enough properties to replace your income. And then finally, the third stage, where I'm at now, is where you can start to invest in things that don't necessarily cash flow now, but they're going to in the future. And maybe we'll talk about this later, but an example is I bought 3 houses so far this year, and I'm using private money for them. They're not going to cash flow shit for 5 or 6 years, but then I'm going to own them free and clear.
Oh, yeah.
And so the cash flow, and I can't underemphasize this, it's the most important part of the rental business. You got to have good cash flow. I'm not talking $3 a month. That's bullshit.
$3.
It's needed $200, $300, $400, $500 a month. I look for a 30% cash on cash return on my investments. That's where I started at.
That's your baseline.
Yep. Okay. It was when I was in part 1 and part 2. Now I'm in part 3. I might not have any return at all, but I'm going to own the house free. I'm actually buying properties with 0 out of pocket, and I'm going to own them free and clear in 5 years. So I don't have to calculate like that.
Yeah. And you have the business, like you said earlier, pivoting back to what you said 5 minutes ago, you have the business to support doing something like that. But if you're trying to quit your job, you're almost getting into the rental rat race if you don't have a self-sufficient business.
Yeah, and you do not want to be in that. You do not want to be in the rental rat race.
No, exactly. Yeah. So, I'm really glad we kind of dove into that because I think it's a lot of these myths people are saying, like, oh, go big. And there's nothing wrong with going big, like you said. But, like, really, I think a lot of people, too, I think a lot of my listeners, at least, they're in the single family business, and a lot of people flip houses. And as you could probably tell, it's a great business. You've probably done it before. You make a lot of money, but you don't have any wealth. Like, you're only as good as your next deal. But then everyone's like, oh, well, my marketing is, very successful, which a lot of flippers, they have great marketing. But if the marketing gets fucked up, or you don't want to hustle so hard, or you're tired of dealing with your team and your sales guys out there, it's like, when is enough enough? When can I create this passive income to where now I don't have to worry about flipping 10 houses a month? I can go after the bigger deals, the better deals, and I can have this rental business hold its own. And a lot of people want to know how to get there. So that's why I'm really glad I brought you on and we kind of debunked some of these myths in the beginning. So my second real question for you, Mark, is it's all about the BRRRR strategy, because you've scaled your business to over 100 units. And I think a big objection a lot of people get is that they're like, hey, I understand the rental game is important. I understand cash flow is king. But, like, it's going to take me forever to get all these properties because I got to put 20% down, and then I got to wait. I got to flip some houses. I got to save some more money. Then I can only get 10 bank loans. So I think I'd love to just kind of rip that up on the podcast today and explain to people what the BRRRR strategy is, how to do it, how it can scale your business, and then just some pitfalls to look out for. And I think we'll give everyone listening some, like, real actionable advice so they can start scaling their portfolios.
Man, that is a topic. I thought I invented the BRRRR method. For those of you that don't know what it means, it's the B is for buy, the R is for renovate, the next R is for rent, the next R is for refi, and then there's another R on the end. Repeat. Just keep doing it. Yeah. And people say, well, how the F am I going to buy these houses when all I got is $1,000, or I live in my mother's basement, or after I spend my $20,000 I've saved, then I'm stuck. I can only get 1 or 2 houses. Exactly. The BRRRR method involves using somebody else's money for all the purchase and hopefully all the rehab, and if you're lucky, all the closing costs. And then they're going to say, oh yeah, bullshit. I've heard that stuff at late night TV. It's all true.
It is true. Yeah.
It's all true. I mean, I've done it. Like, most of what I own, I bought with none of my money. And so people say, well, how is that possible? There's a formula that I want to just cover real quick. It's the BRRRR Formula. We've all heard it. It's either 0.65 or zero point 0.7 times the ARV, which is the after repair value. Then you subtract out your repair costs, how much it's going to take to put into that property to make it so that it's worth that after repair value. You're going to come up with a number. You should never pay more than that number for the property. You should try to get it for less, but that's the most you should pay. So I'm just going to use an easy example for us to go through the numbers real quick, because going through numbers when video or audio is like really tough without a blackboard behind us. So let's say that you look at a house in a neighborhood and you're like, man, this house, if I fix this up, it'll be worth $100,000 times 0.7. 70% of 100,000 is
70,000.
And then you say, man, it needs $20,000 worth of work to make it worth 100. Ah, you're cheating. Yeah, look at this. He's got a little, instead of a blackboard, we got a black calculator. It's awesome.
That's right.
So 20,000 off the 70,000 leaves us with 50,000. That's the most you should pay for the property.
Yeah.
And that's the most a wholesaler should sell the property for, a real wholesaler.
Yeah, there's a real wholesaler.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Story of my life.
So if you get the property, if you can get it under contract for $50,000, there are hard money lenders out there that are going to lend you the money for the purchase and the renovation and possibly the closing costs. They're going to charge you for it. And if you've never heard of hard money, you're going to really think you're getting it hard. It's like 12%, 13, 14, 15, 16%, 2, 3, 4 points. And you're thinking, shit, I'm not paying that. Okay, then you're not going to get the house. Do you want the house with nothing out of your pocket?
Yeah, right.
I look at it, it's like they're like a partner, right? Like they're coming to the table with the deal, you're going to do the work, and they're bringing the money to the table. They should be compensated for that.
Of course.
So after you get the property under contract, if it's a good deal, you're going to find the money. Unless there's something really screwed up with you, like your credit score is 500, you just got out of prison, and you're living in your mother's basement, then you might have some issues. Aside from all that, the money will come if you got a good deal.
Yeah.
So you get the property under contract, you contact the lender, you contact a title attorney, you go buy the property. This is a very short version. You renovate the property with the hard money that you're getting from your lender.
Yeah.
Then you find a tenant for the property. After all that's done, hopefully within a few months, you're going to probably have to season it for 6 months, maybe a year. And this is something you should talk to your lender about first.
Yeah, this is very important.
When you refinance out, the bank's going to say, well, we'll give you a 75% loan to value. You know, we'll lend you 75% of the value for the property.
Yeah.
They appraise your property. It's worth $100,000. They'll give you $75,000. You pay your hard money lender back the 70 you borrowed. You got $5,000 left, maybe for some closing costs, stuff like that. Might have to come to the table with a couple $1,000s. Sometimes if you're able to get the deal even cheaper than that, you can actually walk away with money. I've done it. Many of my friends have done it. And, you know, the larger the deal, the larger the spread, the more likely that is to happen. But when you do that, here's the beauty of this. Let's say that you do have $100,000 in the bank that you want to start with. You can go buy the $100,000 turnkey property, and then you're done. You got one and done. Now what are you going to do?
You're done.
Save another $100,000. Or you can put 20% down and pay your closing costs. So you're in it for, say, $25,000. You can do that 4 times, and then you're out of money. Let's say that the BRRRR doesn't work perfect, and you're out of pocket $5,000. You can do that 20 times. Now you got 20 houses. Even if you're out of pocket $10,000, you can still buy 10 of them. And as all those properties begin to cash flow, you're going to be able to fill your bank account back up really quick.
And just
so that's the beauty of it. Yeah. Now, some of the things that I'll say from my own personal experience, because for all of us in this business, all of our paths are unique. I can't go buy the properties you own. You can't buy the ones I own. Some of the things that have helped me the most are my reputation is being somebody that gets stuff done, that doesn't play games, that doesn't bullshit, that pays on time. And when you do that, the money comes to you a lot faster and a lot easier. And I'll give you an example of some of the things that I've done in the past were with hard money lenders that made it possible for me to build up the business that I have today. When I started borrowing money from, it's the second lender that I ever used. I think he was like 12% and a couple points. And he was an attorney, he was a title attorney. And so on the first of every month, when, most people be writing the check and mailing it, or maybe mailing it a couple of days before, I'd actually go to his office and go up, to the desk, and the lady look up and say, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "I'm here to see Jim." "Is he expecting you?" "He's not expecting me, but he'll be happy to see me." And so she'd, call him in, and he'd come in and I'd hand him the check, and I'd say, "This is the loan payment. It's due today." And I would go in and hand it to him. I didn't want to be just some guy that mailed him a check. I wanted to build this personal relationship. So if he saw me in Home Depot or in the grocery store, he would know who I am and come up and say hi.
Yeah.
The relationships are in real estate like one of the most valuable pieces of the puzzle. And so in doing that, after, probably the third, fourth time I came in, he's like, "Hey, Mark, yeah, I was expecting you, nice to see you." And we're shaking hands and we're talking, it's like, "How's your kid? How's my kid?" All that stuff. And it got to the point where just like a year or two later, I'm standing out in front of a 13-unit apartment building. I'm looking up at it. It's a steal. So I called my lender up and I was like, "Hey, Jim, listen, I'm looking at this 13-unit building on York Road. It's a steal. Price is $325. It needs $75 in renovation. What do you need from me to give to you so you can see if you're interested in doing this deal or not?" And he says, "I'll call you back in 5 minutes." So he calls me back in 5 minutes and says, "You got it." Didn't know the address, never saw the house, because I was showing up on time, on the first, every month. "Here's your check. How are your kids?" Like that.
Doing the right thing.
Yeah, and it worked. And like, this wasn't my plan. Like, I wasn't thinking, "Okay, well, I'm going to show up every time, so he'll lend me money with just a phone call." Like, that was never my plan. My plan was just, I want to build these relationships, because if you're doing everything the right way and you're like a decent person, like, then usually most of the time, good, decent things happen to you. Yeah. And that was an example. I want to share another example, because this is like one of these funny things where just stuff like, you never know where this shit's going to come from.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got a guy that he had an appliance repair company, and I would also occasionally buy used appliances from him. So he calls me up and he says, "Mark, would you like to go out to lunch?" Sure. Who doesn't want to go out to lunch with their appliance repairman?
Me.
Right. So I meet him for lunch, and I'm like, "Hey, Glenn, what's up, man? What can I do for you?" And he says, "Listen, Mark, I'm selling my business, and on January 1st, I'm going to have $1 million. That's awesome." And then he says, "Do you want to borrow it?"
Sure.
I know.
I'd be like, "Oh yeah."
I know. I'm thinking, like, I didn't see this coming. And I asked him, I said, "Glenn, I'm just curious, like, all the people you know, like, why'd you call me?" And he said, "My tenants were my reference." That's the same face I had right there. I'm like, "Huh? What?"
Dude,
I asked for a little bit of explanation. He said, "Listen, whenever your tenants call me because their stove isn't working or fridge isn't working or something like that, they never talk shit about you. They say, 'Yeah, he's a great landlord. Every time I need something done, he takes care of it right away.' Where other tenants, when other tenants call him from other landlords, they say, 'My shit ain't worked in 6 months. I ain't never had a stove that worked.' I was different. My stuff worked, and I took care of it when it didn't. And I took care of my tenants." And him seeing that I treat my tenants that well, that he figured his money would be safe with me. And so I borrowed money from him. And so I guess my point for the whole thing is, it wasn't like that in the beginning. In the beginning, I was using like the garden variety hard money lender. If you don't know who they are, you can find them at the Real Estate Investor Association meetings. You can find them at some meetups, and just talk to other investors, and you're going to start to hear the same names pop up all over the place.
Yeah.
And then, these are usually like the bigger players in the market that are a little bit more lenient. They might be a little bit more expensive, but they're willing to work with people that maybe don't have so much experience and stuff like that. And as your experience grows and your reputation grows, then the opportunities for you to borrow money at more attractive rates is also going to grow. The hard money lender that I use now is 10%, no points. And it's another attorney, actually. And I wasn't even asking him. I was in his office to do a purchase, and he says, "Mark, do you ever need to borrow money?" Sure.
Of course. Yeah. I'm a real estate. Sure.
And he'll do loans 10% interest, no points. He'll do them interest only. He'll amortize them over 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. So I've got a bunch of notes with him now where I'm buying properties where they don't cash flow anything. I'm buying houses, fixing them up. I'm paying him back over like a 5 or 6 year amortization in some cases. But in 5 or 6 years, I'm going to own them free and clear.
Oh my! And that's what you were alluding to at the beginning. You were talking.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's kind of like planting Christmas trees versus tomatoes. Like if you want to eat in the fall, man, you better start planting some tomatoes, right? Because they're going to be ready to eat in a few months. And actually, you're going to have so many freaking tomatoes, you're going to be like begging your neighbors to take them because you just get too many. And if you're planning on eating 5 years from now, plant Christmas trees.
Yeah.
Do all the work now, maintain it a little bit. And 5 years from now, you start cutting them down and selling them up on the corner. And so when I'm buying these houses now, I've got enough tomatoes. I got 100 units that are all cash flow. So now I'm just buying these, just thinking 5 or 6 years when I'm ready to bug out and move to the Cayman Islands or something like that. I'm just going to cut down my Christmas trees, sell them, and roll out. And that's stage 3 of the business of, like, if you're still looking for your first rental, I wouldn't recommend you do that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love how you shared those two stories. I think a lot of people learn well by examples and stories. And like, obviously the point, that you're making was do the right thing, have a good reputation, do what you say you're going to do. And like you said, the same thing's starting to happen to me now. I put out a lot of information on the internet, a lot of value. I document deals, I have this podcast and I just try to help and do the right thing. And next thing you know, you got people, hey, I'd love to invest with you, or hey, how can we JV? And you're planting those seeds and you're doing the right thing. It's like the right thing just always works every time,
It's always the right thing to do the right thing.
That's always the right thing to do the right thing. Well, that's awesome. And I like how you walk through that BRRRR example. So here's a couple of things that at least I'm kind of going through as I'm starting my journey as a BRRRR investor, which I'm committing to now. And I'm sure some other folks have it. The first, it seems to me like, there's two things, I'm a big 80-20 guy. Like, what are the 20% that are going to give me the 80% results? It sounds to me, and I'll have you confirm this, is the two things that are critical with the BRRRR strategy is, number one, getting a deal at the right price, key. And
Absolutely.
Number two, obviously the hard money, the cash, the private money is important, but it's the real financing is getting that bank to basically be able to refinance you once the property is stabilized. So buying at the right number, we've done shows on this. That's very obvious. Just, people should know that to begin with. But to pivot to the refinance part, what are some big obstacles that you see banks might bring up that can hold people back from getting that commitment from the bank saying, hey, assuming the asset's stabilized, I'll give you X amount loan to value? Like, what are some tips and tricks so when investors buy these things correctly and they rehab them, how do they have a successful refinance exit so they can build, like you said, that long-term relationship with the bank so they can consistently bring in deal flow and scale to 100+ units like you?
Sure. I would start with the first thing that you need to do before you do anything else is start to fix your credit. If you have any issues with your credit, take care of that. Nobody's going to lend you money long-term if your credit score is 510. So start working on your credit, getting that fixed, whatever it is you got to do, start taking care of that, because if you can find the property, you can find the hard money, you can find a tenant, but then you can't refi out, and that's your Achilles heel right there, because that's going to stop your business. And if the thing that could be preventing you from that is a bad credit score or no other income. So one of the first things that I would suggest for people do, and I want to speak universally because I live in the Baltimore area, and you probably got people in Kansas and Oregon and everything else listening to this, is that the first thing you want to do, again, is network with people that are in the area that you want to invest in. And you don't want to just find a guy that is in the same place you are. You want to find people that are a few chapters down the road. You want to go to these, the RIA meetings. You want to go to the meetups. You want to start to network with people, because it's a lot easier to talk to somebody that's been doing it for 5 years that knows 10 bankers than go find 10 people that know one banker. So that's the first thing I would tell you to do, is start networking. Talk to bank people. Here's the catch-22 with that, is the banks that are doing it today might not be the banks that are doing it 6 months from now or a year from now when you need to do it. Their portfolios could get a little too heavy in one particular asset class, and their board of directors or whatever could step in and say, listen, we're not going to do any more refis or loans in the city or the county or for rentals. So you can't count on just one bank to do it. If it's be 6 months or you're down the line, because they may not be doing them anymore. The next thing I want to say, and this is one of these things that some people might not want to hear, but if they don't want to hear it, it's probably because they know it's true and it applies to them.
Reality. Yeah.
Is no one knows less about the real estate investor mortgage industry than the loan officers at the big banks. They are, how do I put this? If you go talk to somebody that works at Wells Fargo or Bank of America and they've been there for 5 years, they probably really don't know anything except their bank's products. And their bank products are constrained by these Fannie Freddie rules that say things like you can't do more than 10 investor loans. You can only have one property on each loan. Can't be an LLC or any of that stuff. And so they think because they work at a big bank and they wear a nice suit and they got a lot of school loan debt that nobody knows more than them. Well, everybody knows more than them. They're buffoons. And so when I first started, I was going to these big banks and they're like, "No, you can't do that, can't do that." And then I found this other like local bank, these portfolio lenders. If you don't know what a portfolio lender is, let me back up. The big banks, what they'll do is they'll get 500 mortgages. They package them all together, and then they sell that package of notes in New York on the bond market. And all of that transaction is controlled by the Fed and Fannie and Freddie. The little banks, the portfolio lenders will lend you money to buy a house, but they don't sell the loan. They keep it in-house. They're not going to sell on the bond market in New York. So they don't have the same constraints that Fannie and Freddie do. They still have some constraints, but not the same ones. So I have properties in LLCs. I have 2 row houses on one note. I have well more than a dozen mortgages. And so what happens is once you get away from those people, those big bank people that don't really know that much, it opens up a whole new world of investing opportunities to you. Then the question is, well, how do you find those people? The RIAs, the meetups, talking to people that have been doing it for 5 years that own 20 houses. They're going to tell you where to go. It's always changing. But usually in most markets, there's going to be 3, 4, 5 banks that are really good that are doing those loans right now. And next year, it might be a different 3, 4, or 5 banks. I don't want to be picking up the phone, going through the yellow pages or Google or whatever, every year trying to find which bank it is. Man, just let the network be your leverage. I've got a Facebook group that's got 9,000 people on it. If I'm looking for a bank, I'll get on there and say, "Hey, who are people using for refis for houses in Baltimore?" I'm going to get 5 responses.
Yeah.
I'll let the 9,000 people do the work. Why do I want to do it?
Why would I do it? Yeah. Leverage. No, that's key. That is so key that you said that, because getting that refinance product, and you said it's changing, some banks will be wanting to do it. Some won't want to be doing it. That's critical. And it's funny you said that. Your example with the Chase and the Wells Fargo guys, I tried that in the beginning and I was like, "Oh, well, you don't live in Florida." And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, anyway, so I found some banks who are willing to do that, and I'm going to get on that after this podcast. But I'm so glad you mentioned that, because most investors, they're going to be like, "Oh, I told you so. I told you can't do it. Oh, Chase said I can't do it." And next thing you know, it's like, dude, no, you just got to actually ask the right questions and persist till you get the damn answer. And then that's the one thing holding you back from growing your rental portfolio on a monthly basis. So that I appreciate you sharing that part of the story, because it's critical. And one more thing to add to that, Mark, and this is something I've been looking into too. I've been doing a lot of research and on this refinance, is there's some of these hard money lenders. I'm going to say that very lightly because they're national. And I've done business with them. Yeah, they're good. Like some rehabs, they're offering like 75 LTV, like 6.5%, 30-year fixed loans on rentals. So I'm thinking, shit, why the hell am I going to go to this damn bank when I can use a company like that? I mean, what is your opinion on that?
Most of them are ripoffs. They're scams.
Okay. So I knew that was going to be true, man.
Yeah, I don't know about all of them, but I know that like when the Facebook groups that I run, that as soon as I see somebody's a hard money lender from Houston, Texas, I delete them. They've got like, non-recourse, 30-year AM, 5%, no money out of your pocket. And, and you go to their Facebook and their email address is like, hard money lender, Houston, Texas @gmail.com. Yeah. Like, really? You really got like $50 million to lend out. You get a Gmail address? Come on.
Jesus, you can't get a G Suite, you jerk.
Right. I know it. So, I like to deal with local lenders. This is relationship business, man. You get a relationship with a guy that lives 1,000 miles away. And typically what happens is they're going to say, listen, man, you look great. Yeah, I think we can do this loan, man. This looks really good. They're going to give you some great terms. Yeah, send us a $500 application processing fee.
Yeah.
And then send them that, and then you never hear from them again. They
Yeah.
say, oh, your loan fell apart. The investor got nervous, can't do it. Oh, no, the fee was non-refundable. And that's their business model, is just to like lure you in with these attractive terms, get your $500 deposit, and then say, yeah, the lender, can't do the deal. And
Yeah.
that's what
I see a lot of that. And I'm just like, I got to talk to an expert about this.
it's a great business model if you don't mind stealing from people. I mean, it's a great business model.
Yeah.
But for us as the investors, is the other end of that business model, man. You want to stay with local people and the tried, true, trusted people. When you get to phase 3 and you want to like send your money to some dude in Singapore, for your application fee, like, man, be my guest. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, that's funny. That's awesome. I'm glad we hit on the refinance, and it's so basically at the end of the day, for people listening to this, like you got to get the financing straightened out. So like it's like, what's that 7 habits of highly effective people? Begin with the end in mind. Like get your refinance situation figured out. So when you have a bank who's going to back you, right? Because you're pre-approved or whatever. Now you can go work backwards and go find those deals, and you're going to know what that bank is going to loan you on. So you can start to really scale that business. It's funny you said that, Mark, because I got a really good buddy down in Texas, and he's actually been on the show, and we flip a lot of houses together. And I'm in California, so we partner. He's in Texas. I don't ever see the house. He built a really good sized rental portfolio in DFW doing this strategy. And I was on the phone with him one day. I'm like, dude, how'd you do all this stuff? And he goes, dude, I just found a good bank who would back me. And I've started buying these wholesale properties, and I was just doing the BRRRR strategy. And next thing you know, he's got like a ton of houses, and he did it relatively quickly. And it's like, you can really do this if you have your system dialed in. So Mark, I mean, you've shared a tremendous amount of value today. This has been one of my favorite shows, a very informal, but very entertaining and educational. So, I mean, you have any parting words for people listening to this before we give them some contact information for you? Just if you have to sprinkle one more nugget out of all the nuggets you've dropped today.
Just the parting words could cover like 5 more podcasts. I mean, there's just so much to it. The stuff that I tell people that's the most important, it's not the stuff that most people want to hear, but it's the truth. Man, your network is your net worth. Your reputation is, how do I put this? It's like the most important part of the puzzle. Like I tell this to people, if I lost everything I own today due to whatever, I could get everything back in less than half the time with nothing because of my reputation and my network. The people that I know that have the money know that I'm good. And if I need them, I know they're there. And that's the stuff that you don't hear about. When you're reading these books, you don't read about that. You're reading about how to squeeze another $5 out of a tenant because, they're doing shit in the yard. It's like, there's far more to it than that. I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
I do, man. I'm just like, everything you say, I can relate to you. I'm like,
so, we got a dog shit fee. We got a cat hair fee. We got a this fee. This
fee.
Yeah.
Or a vacation fee. I mean, how am I supposed to go on vacation if I can't charge you late fees? Like,
exactly. And this is what I tell people, and I still do this today. It sounds kind of funny, but it really is true. Somebody says, man, I want to get a new car. Well, no, don't get a new car. Get a new tenant. Go buy a tenant. Don't go buy a car. Go get a house, put a tenant in it, and then let your tenant pay for your damn car. Why are you going to pay for it? And so I'm the same way. If I'm thinking, I thought a few years ago, I want to buy another house in Florida, and it's going to cost $5,000 a month for the mortgage, the car that I have down there, the internet, just all of my expenses going to cost $5,000 a month. So I did the math, and I thought, okay, I need a dozen houses to buy where the cash flow from these houses can pay for the house in Florida. So I started another LLC with a specific intent of doing that. So that's where I'm at. So,
yeah.
And instead of buying a house in Florida, I actually bought a condominium in the Cayman Islands with owner financing. That's a whole different story. We could do another podcast on owner financing. I'm like, really,
let's do it. We'll keep
really good at that. I mean, I can walk you through the strategy that I use for it. It's kind of cracks me up, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But
Perfect. We'll get that on the calendar.
That's definitely something I'd be happy to talk about.
Awesome. Awesome. So that's some great parting words, Mark, for I guess we'll do part one of this rental interview. So Mark, if people, I'm sure people are going to be very interested in finding out more about you. So if people were interested, they want to get in touch with you, anything you have to offer my listeners. I know you have a Facebook group and some other things, just maybe a website or a Facebook group, and then the best way for them to get in touch with you if they want to find out.
Easy way is I got a website, actually markowens.com. You can email me at mark@markowens.com. If you're in the Baltimore investment market, I've got a Facebook group called Baltimore Investors Network. There's, I think it's about 8,900 people on there now. And if you are in an area where there isn't a Facebook group like that, you should create one. I mean, there's no better way to create relationships than to create a network for people to help each other. And if you're not sure like what kind of content to have on it, look on mine. Go to Baltimore Investors Network. Read the announcement at the top that tells you the stuff that's not allowed on the page, like advertising from different services, out-of-state hard money lenders, all that stuff. And just copy and paste it into your own group and start it. And you're going to get a lot of traction from that. And that's it. MarkOwens.com, the Baltimore Investors Network Facebook pages are the best places.
Awesome. Let me just put that in the notes here. Facebook. We'll be in touch on like how to get that information.
Yeah, I did start. I'm in this other phase of my life now. I'm starting these other income streams. I started a website called Hard Money Choices. And this, I know this isn't about that, but this is really for local people, where people, if they're looking for hard money in Baltimore, they go to hardmoneychoices.com and they fill out a one-page app. It takes like a minute. And then I forward that to 14 different hard money lenders. And if one of those lenders does a deal, then they send me a point. It doesn't cost to borrow or anything, but I get paid. Yeah. So if you live in a large city, like, man, start a website like that. It doesn't, it costs $1,000 to build a website.
Yeah.
And you can start, getting points off of other people doing the loans. So it takes me, I can do it from a cruise ship. It takes me, I get an email with the application. I download the PDF, and you can copy my website. I don't care. I download the PDF, I open up a new email, attach it, blind copy my 14 lenders on it, say, here's another deal. If you're interested in it, please contact the borrower. And I hit send, and then I get checks in the mail. So it's
sounds like the beginning of a good free ebook.
Oh, yeah, right. I know. I should have I invented BRRRR, man. I'm telling you, I did my first BRRRR deal before anybody ever even heard of Bigger Pockets. I just figured it out by accident because I was doing retail rehabs, and I thought, man, what if instead of selling this house, I just refinance it and keep it?
Whoa.
I know. And I thought, fuck. And I thought, man, like I discovered this big secret nobody knows. And I started doing like larger apartment buildings like that.
That's awesome, Mark. This was a super fun show. So we'll have all that once the show goes live. We'll have all the contact information in there, and we'll get the owner financing one on the calendar too. So I really appreciate your valuable time. This was super fun, and I'm sure the listeners are going to really love this one. So thanks so much.
You're welcome. I hope everybody has a great day. Take care, man.
See ya.
All right.